Welcome to the Art of Pilates. I'm Louise Taube, principal trainer. I am a studio owner and a Pilates teacher, and I train teachers as well. If you'd like to connect with me, you can visit my website for teachers at taubepilates.com. If you're wanting to check out my studio, it's louisetaubepilates.com. And if there's a topic on the podcast that you'd love to hear about, please let me know. Hi, I'm Louise from Taube Pilates, and I'm here to talk a little bit about active aging today for our podcast. There are 5 types of aging, and there's one type of aging that we cannot change, and that is our actual age. So during this podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about the 5 types of aging and which ones can be improved. Also, we're going to identify common considerations that we need to have for our active aging clients. We'll also talk a little bit about an initial consultation, what you might do when you have clients who are joining you who are aging actively, and some basic workout protocols. So ways to also help to sharpen the mind. So using that idea of neuroplasticity, especially for people who maybe have a little bit of Parkinson's or are not as sharp as they used to be, how we can improve that. So how to improve reaction time, different exercises that we might use for that, and also the way you might use game playing in a session to help improve cognitive abilities, reaction time, balance, that type of thing. Who are the people who are in this group of active agers? Some consider active aging from the age of 50 because of the changes in hormones in both men and women, there are changes that happen in the body. So you're more likely to have things like high blood pressure, diabetes, like maybe new heart conditions that happen, a stroke. So different things like that come into play from around the age of 50, which seems to be like a really young age. Like I'm 55 and I don't feel like I'm really old, but I do know that my joints are a little bit sore in the day, and I think I am getting a little bit more arthritis in my hips and my knees and my fingers. So taking those things into account when I'm exercising and also with my active aging clients. So interestingly, you get a seniors card in Australia once you turn 60, which gives you discount travel. So concession on trams, trains, buses. So yeah, which seems so strange to be called a senior at the age of 60, which I consider to be really quite young. So within all populations, although we're saying people who are active agers or would like to be more active with their aging or age actively, everyone is different. So no one is the same. People have gone through different experiences. Someone may have gone through breast cancer, and that may have affected their actual biological age. So when you look at them under a microscope, you can see some markers which have actually aged them more than someone who maybe didn't have any bouts with cancer or cancer treatments, which can be really exhausting for the body. So there is different types of abilities. So there could be the elite exerciser, the independent exerciser, and then maybe someone who needs some assist for exercising. So generally in a Pilates studio context, we will be having people in who are independent exercisers, those people who are quite mobile. They can get up and down the stairs easily. Activities for daily living, they can do all of those. They don't need any assist with that. I do have one client who I visit her at her house, and she needs an assist. So she uses a wheelie walker to walk with. So you could say she's needing assist with her daily activities. She cannot move around without the assistance of that wheelie walker. Some clients, you could say they're elite in some areas. One of my clients who is an active ager, she is classified as elite in terms of balance. Her balance is exceptional. She was a professional dancer and she hasn't lost that ability to stand on one leg and balance for a period of time. So she's at the level, and she was actually tested for this by a physio who then said she's at the elite level for balance. So people who we want to work with are generally people who are independent exercisers. So those active agers who who do not need any assist with their activities of daily living. So within the science of aging, what happens is the telomeres at the end of our chromosomes start to fray. And with that fraying, that just causes us to start to age. With the changes in hormones in our body, which regulate all of the systems in our body, then that has aging factors as well. Sensience is the science of aging. There's lots of studies now about aging and the whole process of aging. So there are more and more people getting older all the time. The number of people in the over 60 age group is increasing dramatically, and they're the largest growing population of age. So there are 5 different types of aging. There is your chronological age. So I'm 55 and I cannot change my chronological age. That's always going to be whatever age you are, that is your chronological age. Functional age. So that's the ability to perform your active tasks of daily living. So active daily living tasks is your functional age. So if you're able to get out of a chair, get out of bed, have a shower by yourself, get dressed by yourself, make your own dinner, those types of things are activities of functional daily living, active daily living skills. Biological age. So biological age is your physical and mental biology at a cellular level. So if we took cells out of your body and looked at them, you would be able to determine what age you are at a cellular level. So we can actually change that. So for example, if we were a diabetic, then maybe our biological age would be older. But if we can reduce that so that if you're not in the category of having diabetes, then you're reducing your biological age to a younger age. Or if you have very high blood pressure, that increases your biological age. But if you're able to decrease your blood pressure, then that brings you to a younger biological age. There is your psychological age. So your cognitive ability, your neuroplasticity, so the ability to learn and to take on new information, to learn new skills. So I love the idea of always be learning. And I think keeping your mind young and sharp is always about having something of interest that you're studying so you become more informed within that. There's the social age. So it's really important to stay connected to other people. And I really feel like this is the most important aspect of aging, is to have those social connections. So whether that's via Facebook or in person, or just going to the shops and having coffee with a friend or chatting to the checkout person, it's really important to have those social connections. And that keeps us young. If we totally isolate ourselves, then we start to really deteriorate. So having the social aspect is absolutely essential to aging. And in terms of Pilates, it's so important to see those people face to face in the studio or even online. One of my oldest clients was 91 and she would do she would do FaceTime Pilates sessions with me. She was based up in Queensland. So I would see her on FaceTime and keep her active until the age of 92, where she then moved to a nursing home. And the family decided that it was probably too hard for her to keep going with those FaceTime sessions. But I really enjoyed those sessions and just saw how wonderful it was that she was able to interact and progress with her functional abilities. I also have another client who I go to her house. She's 92 now and she lives independently at home, but she does need the assistance of a wheelie walker. And I feel like the social aspect of me coming to see her, to do her exercise sessions, really keeps her young. So it stops her from going into that social area of not being socially active. So there's lots of common issues with aging. So you have musculoskeletal conditions, things like osteoarthritis. So our joints tend to become more stiff. So it's really important to mobilize those joints, whether that's including some wrist and hand exercises to keep the fingers and the wrists supple. So having a really long warm up. So 20% of the warm up, maybe that's going to be just getting the joints moving so that everything is really liquefied right to the end, right to the tips of the fingers, right to the toes. And now a word from our sponsor, Taube Pilates. If you're interested in moving well and staying strong as you age, I've created an active aging ebook just for you. This 28-page guide is designed for adults 60 plus, Pilates clients focused on healthy aging, and Pilates teachers focused on working with older bodies. Inside, I share 8 essential exercises to support strength, confidence, balance, posture at any age. You can download it free in the link in the description. Move well, live strong. So arthritis is common in people's toes, knees, hips, spine, neck. All the joints can have, and shoulders, all the joints can have a little bit of arthritis. So trying to get those joints moving without loading them up initially is really important for our active aging clients. Osteoporosis. So with osteoporosis, you want to keep the bones strong. You want to prevent falls. So working with functional moves is absolutely important. Working on balance. I love using the Wonder Chair for this because you can really work in the standing leg press with testing out the balance. You can then put something underneath the standing leg to make it a little bit more challenging. You can also take this into a weight transfer where you're actually stepping onto the pedal and then lifting the back leg up, stepping down and bringing the pedal back up again. So you're working with gait and weight transfer, which is really important for people with Parkinson's disease or who've had a stroke to try and get them into that functional movement again. And I also really love doing the lunges on the chair as well with the handles for support so that it's safe, but actually really working into those functional moves of stepping up and down. So if you're stepping up onto a tram step or stepping upstairs, you really want to have the ability to get into that lunging shape and work through the glutes and the hamstrings. So you have really good control through the trunk and the hips and legs. So another thing with osteoporosis, we want to really work on that back extension. So really supporting the spine and making sure that we're improving posture. So you're not ending up curling over like a cashew nut. You really want to keep that lovely length through the spine, axial elongation growing into the space above you, which is why I really enjoy doing more functional moves with my active ages so that they're really staying in that good posture and understanding what that good posture and form is and strengthening those back extensors to help hold themselves up in a much better functional position. Because if you're curled over, it becomes very hard to go into shoulder flexion. But if your chest is lifted, then that shoulder flexion becomes so much easier to do. You're not restricted by that kyphosis. So other things that might affect us when we're aging are neurological things, dementia. So I find dementia quite hard to work with because you're constantly having to teach the same exercise over again with those clients who have dementia. So keeping it simple. I like to play music that is, I feel like this really helps with dementia, that's more from their time period when they were a younger person. And also I find music can be very relaxing so that you don't get that anxiety of worrying about, oh, am I doing this right? So having music that is not too loud, softer playing, but kind of harks back to previous eras when they had much better function of the brain. Parkinson's is another neurological thing that can happen with aging. My dad had Parkinson's. He lived with Parkinson's for 23 years, so a very long time to live with Parkinson's. So he was diagnosed with it for 23 years, but he may have had it previously. So he really worked to combat the effects of Parkinson's. I used to do Zoom video sessions with my dad because he lives in Queensland, I'm in Melbourne. And I felt like that really helped, but it got to a point where it was too unsafe to have him standing. So he was at risk of falls for any standing exercises. So we had to then do the exercises sitting down. And because the way the Parkinson's affected him, his vocabulary changed and also his swallowing changed as well. So we would actually practice exercises such as swallowing, where you hold onto the tongue and swallow. So you kind of, it's really quite hard to do. So if you try that now, just hold on the tongue. And that really works those swallowing muscles. So that became a muscular exercise that we would actually practice, as well as practicing words. While we were practicing fine motor skills of moving the hands and fingers and also extending back over the chair and working with hand weights and therabands and using imagery to help him really get into the idea of what the exercise was. So, the bow and arrow, he could really understand and know that what that was because he could visualize what pulling back the string of an archer's bow would look like. So those types of things were really quite helpful for my dad, who was going through Parkinson's and lived with it for a very, very long time and quite successfully, mostly until towards the end. So people with strokes, that's another neurological condition. So really working with gait and balance and posture again becomes so important with these people who have gone through strokes. Getting that gait working again. And quite often people who have had a stroke are quite fearful of doing upright exercises, but it's really important to get them to be able to balance well, standing on one leg, working with the chair in those standing leg press exercises, calf raises, getting that plantar flexion and dorsiflexion through the ankle joints so that they're not going to trip over their feet when they're walking, because you don't want to have that shuffling gait, which actually is a common thing in Parkinson's as well. So working into dorsiflexion becomes so important. Strengthening that tibialis anterior is absolutely essential with aging, so you don't have that foot dropping or dragging along the floor with the gait. So visual issues, things like macular degeneration, glaucoma, cataracts. So if you're unable to see, it can really affect your balance and your peripheral vision, your confidence. So with some of my clients, I actually do practice some balancing exercises with their eyes. So I'll hold a finger up and we'll be standing on one leg or standing in tandem stance or semi-tandem stance. So either of those, and then we'll take the finger in towards the nose. So you're really focusing on that finger and then going left and right and then circles. And then practicing without having a finger, so up and down, left, right, and circles. And this can really help to get the brain to work in a different way. And it helps with balance, because if you're starting to lose that visual ability and referencing where you are in space, then you can be at a risk of falls as well. Also, cardiovascular issues, heart disease, high blood pressure, low blood pressure. So with blood pressure, quite often you can have the effect of feeling dizzy, quite often transitioning from lying down to sitting up, especially with low blood pressure, can make you feel really dizzy. So rather than having people lying down, standing up, moving around so much, I'll try and work with them more in an upright position. So maybe doing footwork on the chair, standing leg press on the chair, standing arm springs, seated mermaid stretch, so that they're actually working more just in that upright position. So people might get dizzy from lying on their back to lying on their side. So taking out those instances where they might feel dizzy, I find makes the whole class a lot smoother with the flow, and that we're working in more functional positions. So also some of my active aging clients, rather than going for a full 55-minute session, we reduce the time to 30 minutes because that's all the time they need to get in those functional exercises, those balance exercises, the gait exercises, testing out, standing on one leg, working those postural muscles, lengthening the spine, mobilizing the joints. So there are hormonal changes, and these can really affect the body. Menopause affects every system in the body. So you'll start to get joint pain when previously you never had joint pain. You'll start to get musculoskeletal injuries. So an Achilles tear, frozen shoulder, hip pain, plantar fasciitis. So many different things can start to affect the body with the changes in hormones. And I have a whole course on menopause and perimenopause. Diabetes can raise its ugly head. There can be thyroid problems as well. So things start to really change from about the age of 50 onwards. And we have to take this into consideration when we're working with our active aging clients. So some general considerations are we need to think about, especially with osteoporosis, how we move the spine. So if someone has osteoporosis, we're not going to be flexing the spine, doing our standing roll downs, touching the toes, washerwoman 1 and washerwoman 2 on the chair. We want to take the spine more into extension. If you're rotating the spine with someone with osteoporosis, you are better off doing it in a supine position unloaded or a sideline position unloaded. So book openings and side to side with the feet down or the side twist supine. But you want to reduce the range of movement so you're not going right into the end range of movement. So stop before that end range. So with osteoporosis, reducing the range of movement becomes important, but we still want to have a little bit of mobility in the spine. So not taking it all the way around in rotation, but just making that a little bit smaller. To fit to fracture outcomes, agreed, or they recommended that physical activity with osteoporosis to prevent vertebral fracture in terms of movement of supine. You could do a cat-cow in 4-point kneeling, but not at the end range of either the cat or the cow, so smaller range. But you wouldn't do a loaded flexion such as a sit-up in a supine position. So a 4-point kneeling position is a better position if you're thinking of flexing and extending the spine, but not to end range because of the relationship to gravity. Too Fit to Fracture also states that rotation is fine in a side lying or supine position, but not so much in a standing position where you've got the load of gravity pressing down onto the bones in the spine. So extension was great in terms of Too Fit to Fracture. And they did say within that there are case reports of spinal fractures that may have resulted from yoga flexion postures in individuals with low bone mass. So it's interesting, that study from Too Fit to Fracture. Thank you so much for listening to Art of Pilates. I'm your host, Louise Taube, principal trainer as recognised with the PAA, studio owner and Pilates teacher. To stay connected, please subscribe to my mailing list via my website, taubepilates.com. And if you've loved this show, please give me a review. I'd love a Facebook review or a Google review. It really helps to support me and my business and this podcast. See you next time and keep moving with intention.